One of the most vital settings in this game of public speaking and communication is found in the name itself, public, which means that you're talking to a large amount of people, and depending on the event, it can be hundreds and sometimes even thousands. Which is why at that point, it's so important to put thought and focus behind every word and syllable that you say. Because what you say will then determine what those listeners think of you and your ideas days, weeks, months, and sometimes years down the line. So why is it so important to focus on what you say in such a big setting? The point is, when you're speaking to so many people, you get a sense of responsibility, but most importantly, you get a sense of leadership because you have the undivided attention of so many people. So it's extremely important to say correct things and things that are memorable. Speech and leadership, which is what this segment is about, doesn't only have a presence in a setting where you're talking to a large amount of people, but it also comes in handy when in a very personal setting. When you start a project or you lead a team to do something that you've always wanted to do, there's always conflicts and there's always big decisions that you'll have to make that will change the course of how you lead your team and how you lead your project in general. This is where it's so important for you to put thought behind what you say to your teammates and people who are working under or with you. One thing that is extremely important is to always be objective. When you speak to a lot of people, it's very easy to get lost in the momentum of having so much attention and people listening to you with their undivided attention. So it's very important to be objective, know what you need to get done, and know what you have to say. This helps you to not only chart out a plan of what needs to be said in the least amount of time possible, but also is the most efficient way of getting your point across. One very interesting thing that's been proven through a lot of studies is that in an age of social media and in an age of so many short conversations, people's time spans are decreasing. So the amount of information you can tell them needs to be said in a less amount of time. Because of this, in leadership especially, when so many tasks and projects need to get done, it's so important that you say the most in the least amount of time. Now there's three very clear things that you can do that help you to be very objective in your leadership and what you say in that leadership position. The first of which is clarity. Simply be clear. When you have a clear understanding of what needs to get done and therefore what you need to lead and how you need to lead it, it's very contagious for people you work with to understand again what needs to be done. So when you're clear with the end goal, this also transfers to people you work with, and therefore everyone does their small part in getting that bigger thing done. This proves extremely efficient when you have a short timeline and something that needs to get done rather quickly. So when everyone has a good understanding of what needs to be done, it can only be because of your leadership and because of your effective communication to everyone in your clarity that this needs to be done and this is how we get there. So everyone has their individual parts, and when they take responsibility of those parts because you've portrayed to them how important each of those parts are, that's when your bigger tasks get done more efficiently, which is why your leadership and the effective communication you deliver in that leadership is so important. The second thing in this list is confidence. You being confident is contagious, and confidence encourages. When you have a very clear belief in your vision and what needs to get done with your project or whatever it is that you're leading, everyone feels that this confidence is valid, and therefore no one is sort of hopeless and headless when it comes to their approach towards contributing towards this project. When you're confident in your leadership and when you're confident in the brand or whatever project that it is that you're doing, it's very clear that this will get done, and therefore that very idea is what motivates everyone to do their part in then being successful as a project and as a team. The third and final thing in this list is your straightforwardness. When you're straightforward with everyone about what they need to do, your project will be efficient. As the leader of the project, you have a very good understanding of the bigger picture and the macro sense of what needs to be done. But everyone on the team may not have this same perspective. Therefore, it's so important to make everyone aware of the value that their contribution holds. When they have this straightforward statement is when they are motivated to do their small part that will then obviously have a big change and a big effect in the final product, which will help what needs to be done in the future. And lastly, leadership is a whole spectrum of learning. When you start a project and when you have a successful outcome, or even if you don't have a successful outcome, it's always a learning curve. So when you start to communicate with people, when you start to lead people through what you say, you learn over time that, okay, I said this at that time and it didn't really lead to something that I wanted it to. Therefore, you always learn and adapt to the way you say what you say. Everyone has their own styles of leadership and everyone has their own styles of speech, and that's all right, and that's what makes every project different. But when every other single person has a good understanding of what they want in the end, and when they listen, is when they get their end product. So I hope that small rundown of speech and leadership and how to lead with communication was helpful, and that when you start a project or when you start anything that you've always had in your head, this facet of communication and public speaking does help you, because it's one of the most vital stepping stones in what you will then call your project.